there's been a lot of news about inflation and gas, and it seems like the new news cycle that's starting to bubble up, we're getting from Politico, from CNN, from the Washington Post, and all these big outlets, is that there's going to be a global food shortage, or that we're already experiencing one. Not to mention inflation is through the roof. So we got a couple stories about, there's this billionaire who owns a chain of grocery stores, and he said, buy your food now because it's going to get really expensive soon. They're saying that basically because Russia produces so much fertilizer and now no one can trade with them because of the war, we're going to see fertilizer costs skyrocket, availability diminish, crop yields will drop by 40%. Come fall is when everyone's going to get hit by it. That's the latest scary news in the media, and all has to do with the war and everything that's going on. So how you guys doing?
So if I can get a couple million bats and bat guano, I can corner the market on fertilizer?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Ian.
Yes.
How do you feel about going in with me on a bat investment?
In on me.
In on me.
Well, the way you asked me the
On
question,
bats.
it's hard to
Let me
hard to
put
say
my
no.
thought in you. Yeah, it's very strange
now
way
that
to
you
phrase that.
conceived
You know
inside
what?
of
We'll
me.
talk later. We'll discuss graphene and bats.
Okay. Yeah. Let's. Maybe we do need a little bit of nationalizing fertilizer. What?
I don't
So
know.
what-
Nationalizing food production never ends well, bro.
What about
It is
fertilizer,
a
though?
great way to murder
Yeah,
millions
it's
of
just
people.
gonna make
Yeah.
It's
How are the
way
Everyone's
cheaper
gonna
than
starve.
nuclear weapons too. Socialized agriculture is the best way to kill people.
That's actually a really good point. You know, we work so hard on nuclear weapons to kill tons of people when all we needed was communism.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, the
True.
United States didn't even need to drop bombs on Japan. We could have just dropped communist pamphlets and then problem
Like,
solved.
communism in
That's
a
what was done to
nutshell,
us.
like the agriculture is such a good microcosm for that. Of like what the Soviets would do is they'd go, okay, we need more crops, so we're going to order all of the farmers. You've got to till twice as much land now, and the farmers went, yeah, okay, and they just lifted up the what do you call them, the rudders. The rudders are the tractors. You can tell I'm a farmer. They lifted up the rudders, and then they just drove really fast. Like they just raked the top of it because they don't have any personal gain in it. And then, like, of course, that meant that all of the bushels of wheat declined, and everybody started starving to death in Ukraine.
The other thing they would do is they would go to the guy who knows how to farm, kill him,
Yeah.
and then
Yes.
take someone who didn't know how to farm
Yeah.
and put him in charge.
Cambodia is a great example. I mean, Cambodia, they literally, first, like Cambodia, they shot anybody that had any kind of education. They just shot it to the point where if you had glasses, Ian, you'd be up against the wall.
This is Pol Pot.
Yeah, Pol Pot.
Was he like a subject of Mao, or was he a friend of Mao, or inspired by Mao, or something?
He was not only was he inspired by Mao, this is literally the name of Cambodia's communist program was the Super Great Leap Forward. Not the Great Leap Forward, but the Super Great
He's
Leap
like, it was
Forward.
my idea.
And they killed about a quarter of the population doing that. And they literally, they'd go, okay, the annual crop yield of the average hectare of farmland in Cambodia, let's say it's like 8 bushels or something. They went, all right, from now on, everybody has to do 40 bushels. And people would go, hi, I'm a stevedore. I don't know how to farm. And also, there's a bunch of rocks here. And like that was it. And like it caused massive death.
Yeah, that was the funny thing where, was it Mao who's like, kill the sparrows? Was that
Yeah.
And then everybody, locusts ate all
Right?
the crops.
Yeah.
This is why
Don't
centralized.
let commies near food.
Yeah.
Don't let commies
Ever.
near food.
No,
I mean,
hold
lefties
on.
in general.
Shout out to Maduro.
Oh boy.
Oh,
Yeah,
why
did a
is
great
that?
job there.
When he was giving his national address and then just pulls an empanada out from a drawer and bites it really
Amazing.
slowly and then puts it back on TV for everyone to watch.
See, this is how great capitalism is, because capitalism is like, what are we worried about? Getting fat. That's
Yes.
what we're worried about with
Yes.
capitalism is excess Twinkies. That's how great like we just produce all this stuff.
Yeah, I saw AOC has a new ASMR video out. I don't know if you guys saw it. She's like whispering. She's like, no, baby.
Wait, are you serious? Stop it.
Yeah, she's legit whispering into the.
No, you're
and she's
messing
like,
with me.
No, I'm not.
Are you serious?
Yes.
AOC did ASMR.
I don't know if she was
It's like just
intending-
whispering?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just whispering. And she was like, people don't realize they're actually socialists because no one's a capitalist because no one has $1 billion.
What?
And I'm
That's
like,
not how- that's
I'm
not what
like,
the word means.
You know, I was like gonna tweet something that was like mean. And then I was just like, she's got a dictionary, right? Because that's not what capitalism means.
Technically, she has a degree in economics. And that's the thing that really
No,
irritates
she doesn't.
No, I believe she studied.
know she does.
She clearly didn't sit through any of the classes. That drives me nuts because I'm going to spend the rest of my life having to just go, no, the definition of socialism is the government owns the means of production. That's the definition of socialism.
Right.
It doesn't mean
No,
sharing.
no.
That would make the Koch brothers socialists.
But what you fail to realize is that the definition of capitalism is you have $1 billion.
That's right.
Oh, that explains it. Seamus, you're so smart.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I could inform you guys.
So in communism, they own the production. Socialism, they also own the production. What's the difference there?
There's actually debate about that. The distinction between communism and socialism. Some people say that communism is the end state and socialism what comes in between.
Yeah.
Others say that communism is when the government completely controls culture and economy, whereas under socialism they're just controlling economy.
Well,
it isn't really completely.
Let me tell you what the
left.
lefties say. They say socialism is an economic system and communism is a political system. In socialism, you can have a variety of social issues. You can have a variety of, like church or gay marriage. But the economic system is the means of production are owned by the people. And they believe in full out socialism. There would be no, I don't want to say no currency, but there's no like private trade of goods. Whereas communism is everyone's equal on every issue, and then communism includes issues like gay marriage, whereas socialism is just economic.
So would it be like socialism is to communism as capitalism is to democracy?
Yeah, but that is a this distinction.
Capitalism's the economic state, and democracy is the governmental political state.
Not necessarily. Capitalism can exist under multiple systems.
Sure, exactly.
In fact,
but
there are many who argue democracy and capitalism are opposed to one another.
Exactly. Like socialism and communism are socialism is a large component of communist ideology.
Like it can't exist. One can't exist. Communism cannot exist without socialism.
Well, but we're also approaching this as Westerners from a liberal democracy, because as Seamus rightly points out, the commies didn't think this way. Like if you go back and you look at Soviet manifestos, like back in the 80s, like you see the Soviet premier would say, we believe we can achieve communism in the next 10 years, right? So like to an American, that sounds very odd for the Soviet Union to say it's not communist. But the way commies thought was socialism is our economic policy. Communism is when the withering of the state occurs and the proletariat becomes the kind of the end-all be-all, right? The last 30 years, we've made a distinction of socialist countries are socialist countries that are cute that we like, and communist countries are socialist countries that we find scary.
Yeah.
And capitalism, for those that don't know, is literally just when private individuals have the ability to trade amongst each other.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep. The private sector, meaning charity, individuals, and corporations.
It means
owns the means
that
of production.
Capitalism would be you as an individual decide that your labor has value and you decide what you're willing to exchange it for. In socialism, you don't get to decide what your labor is worth. You just get what's available.
Yeah, I mean, central planners determine where your labor should be allocated. And to your point, this is why you constantly hear commies saying that real communism has never been tried, because they're talking about a theoretical end state which has never existed in the real world.
Communism
Gosh, they sure killed a lot of people trying to get there.
Yeah,
though,
exactly.
Real
communism.
They did some heavy lifting to try and get there.
Yeah. Also, this is hilarious because they say communism works, and then they say real communism's never been tried. And how on earth could you know if it works if it's never been tried?
Well, it sounds like they tried it for 100 years and failed.
They failed to achieve their end goal.
You could. I mean, it sounds so weird for me to say. I think they could be right if you tried it with 150 people, and anybody in that group could leave whenever they wanted.
But then it would be communism because it's not coercive.
It would be absolutely.
Like a family is communist. We've talked about this in the past. It's like the valence levels of behavior in your family. It's very communist to each what their needs. In your city, it's socialist. You have firemen and they work for the city.
That's not socialism.
And then the greater whole, we're more democratic.
That's
republic.
not socialism. Fire departments are not socialism. Police
departments,
departments,
social programs
are not socialism. Socialism is when the factory is owned by the state.
Yeah.
Like the fire department, and it's owned by the city.
So having some components of emergency services that are provided to you through social services is not socialism. It's not socialism. You can call it social welfare programs.
Like a hybrid?
This is what happens with Denmark and Bernie Sanders is like, they're socialist. And then and then the prime minister comes out and he says, no, we're not.
The prime minister flew to America to remind, he's like, no, we are actually a market economy. We are a market economy that has a robust welfare state.
Exactly.
Which is a nuance that is very much lost on Bernie Sanders, who has converted the word socialism to mean sharing.
So is the fire department part like welfare? Is it considered welfare?
I would say you could say that in a sense, yeah.
Well, first of all, fire department actually varies quite a lot in the United States. About half of the fire departments in the United States are private voluntary organizations. About half of them are some combination of publicly funded and things like that. So the idea that all fire departments are a public government organization the same way like police departments are would be a misnomer. I think I don't know. I could kind of go either way on that, because like theoretically an army could be a mercenary army, right? But we don't tend to have those. We tend to have an actual military that is paid for by taxpayers and things. You can have like bodyguards and things like that. So
fire departments aren't producing things; they're emergency services. So I think it's fair to say there's a distinction between you open up a cracker factory and the government's like, no, we control how this operates because it's going to be equal for the people.
You would make the distinction between economic productivity or just economic production versus services.
Well, not necessarily services, because services could be anything. I mean, delivery services, the post office. I just think it's fair to say that the fire department is not socialism. The fire department isn't the means of production. It's emergency services.
Yeah.
So emergency services are different from services. The post office is not an emergency service. The post office, we could argue, should be privatized. FedEx and UPS are better.
I argue that quite a lot, actually. I get occasionally people will call me from NPR and be like, "You want to come talk about this?"
There are some questions about why it's important the fire department be sort of nationalized, sort of private. A lot of areas that have volunteer fire departments, they do because they don't have the resources to sustain large salaried fire departments. But one of the issues with fire departments as to why it might make sense to have it be sort of like look, we're going to cover all fire is because fire spreads.
Right.
And if the police department showed up and said, this guy doesn't pay us, we don't service him, it's like, what are you going to do? Put the fire out for the buildings next to it? No, we're all too close to each other. Just put the fire out and we'll have to figure it out.
Yeah, those are negative externalities are a legitimate role for government, in my opinion. Like if you've got like smog doesn't obey property lines, right? So like that's a situation where it makes sense to have some kind of adjudicating service.
But if I want to make and sell shoes, having the shoe department where you've got to go apply at the government office and then pass some, affirmative, action test or, diversity test, and then they allow you to be a shoemaker, that's a problem.
And if there were a federal shoe department and you and I came in and went, we think the private sector could probably handle this, people would think we're monsters. Yeah. If I said we should privatize the federal shoe department because the Milwaukee public factory makes way too many left shoes and the Oregon factory makes insufficient right shoes, so we're making people wear two left shoes. I think the private sector could handle this. People would go, you want people to walk around barefoot in America and you're a monster.
The problem with the Department of Education, people want that ended and I think privatized or at least sent around localized, is that when it's no longer federalized, then how do you organize it? How do you make sure everyone's getting like a similar shoe size? How do you make sure that your size 11 is the same as his size 11 if you're different companies with no government oversight?
Arguably, it's not doing it now, right? I mean, the federal government basically just tries to bribe state education departments with grants, like with No Child Left Behind and that kind of thing. But the actual government or the actual curriculum is still done at the state level, and the funding is done at the local level.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Department of Education has only been around since the late 1970s, so it's not as if this is integral to our public education system. And even if it was, it would still probably be bad because our public education system is horrible.
Yes.
I think Massey said it would free up $400 million a year.
Again, flip it. If the private sector, if we just had like charter schools, and that was all the schools in America right now, and we were looking at test scores, people would go, man, the private sector's really failed. We need to change this. But when the government does it, we never go, man, the government's screwing this up. We should privatize this.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
So that's the way I describe it is with these social programs. Well, I'll start by saying all laws should have sunset clauses, all bills being passed through Congress. And the same is true for all social programs. I like the idea that we're like, okay, we got a serious issue, right? We've got mass homelessness. We're going to need a major public works program. That's fine to me as long as it's got like a finite limit on when it expires. Because what happens is they come out and they say, we need a Department of Education. We need public schools because we need our kids to be educated. And then a few years goes by and the kids are suffering and doing worse. And so the way I describe this is the United States with a festering wound, they slap a bandage on it. They say, we'll just cover that up with a nice little bandage. And then a few years goes by and they look at it, now it's smoldering and infested and worse. And they say, let's just put another bandage on top of that. And just what they do is they keep dumping money into failing programs. Yeah. So you think they're fixing it, but they're not really fixing it.
Yeah.
Right? So they're saying, hey, we're going to fix it with this money. And you go, oh, thank you. And then you walk away. And then they don't actually fix it. They make it worse.
And you can't falsify that either. Like if we're going to approach policy making scientifically, you can't disprove a negative, right? Like if any government program you ever put out there fails, the proponents of it can go, well, it was insufficiently funded. That applies literally
every single time. Yeah, we failed, so give us more money. It
would have worked if only you'd given us money, but there's never going to be enough money for everybody to have what they want.
Yeah, it's hilarious. You see political leaders do this a lot too. Like, I didn't achieve everything I was supposed to in my first term, which is why you need to give me a second term.
What?
Like, sometimes it can be legitimate. I just want to mention this one Milton Friedman quote, that there is nothing so permanent as a temporary government program.
You know what? Abolish government.
Just get rid of it all?
Yeah,
let
just
it fall?
Whole thing, abolish government.
Yeah.
I want a boutique
I don't
government.
think we have to.
I want a little like compact IKEA
Nobody,
government.
no government for anybody. Nobody gets any government.
It's going to fall apart.
Just none.
Am I the statist
think
here?
that
I did
works.
not see this.
No, I'm kind of
All right, I think
statist,
there
too.
should be a government. I just
Yeah,
think
yeah.
it should basically protect us from
No, I'm
bears
just
and maybe
kidding.
communists.
We need an agile government that changes when the technology changes. Like, we should be working more online. The government's so slow to adapt. They're so happy getting their paychecks and just going to work when they
Ian,
feel
Ian.
it.
Here's where I disagree.
Wait.
I actually think the government's too quick to adapt. I wish they moved a lot more slowly than they do.
Ian, when
powdered wigs.
when was like
yeah.
the first paper on graphene?
that I ever saw.
No, just like what that you can think of, like the first
I think it was
big
2004 is when it was
2004
discovered.
So
Maybe,
we're
something like
looking at
2001,
what are we at now?
97 maybe?
18 years, and the U.S. government is not made of graphene.
I've never heard of
not made of it
someone
yet?
in
It's not
the
made of
government
graphene?
mention the word unless they're sitting across from me and I say it to them and then they repeat me. It's crazy.
funny
You had your
whenever
opportunity yesterday.
whenever we have a politician or Ian's like graphene, like now's my chance. You guys should be looking at this. It's as if like
use the best government in the world to produce the most miraculous substrate on the planet Earth.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.